Yes guys, so I thought I would do a voiceover to this video. So this is round 9 of the Sodi Thursday Night League in the heavyweight class. So this is obviously the race start. We qualified in pole position. I think we qualified in pole position by around a second. So we had plenty of pace in the wet here. Now first corner here is always difficult in the wet, especially if you're on the tighter line. But we managed to survive that one and into turn 2, and again we've got through here nice and smoothly. And now for me it's just about building up some momentum, getting the tyres warm after sitting on the grid for a good 10 minutes or so as the lightweight grid gets made and obviously the heavyweight one. And then once the tyres are warm, we have a little push on. So generally this race is going to be quite boring because it was a lights to flag victory, which was needed because the last round of the championship I actually got a penalty. I actually won the race, but I got 2 penalties and I got demoted to 3rd, which was not good for my championship because I needed to catch up some points. So going into this round, it was all about, for me personally, just taking the win, but in the most dominant fashion as possible. And I think we did that. We won it by, I can't remember exactly how much, but it was around 20 to 30 seconds or something like that from second place. And with the split grid we managed to get up to I think around 6th or 7th place in the lightweight field, and the fastest lap of the race overall, including the lightweights. So obviously the wet weather pace definitely isn't an issue, but I think this race for me was more about setting a statement due to how annoyed I was from last week. But yeah, right, enough chatting. Generally the Thursday Night League, this is it's meant to be a casual championship, but I think the front runners in the light and the heavyweights are serious about it. And me in particular, there's a group of us fat lads in the heavyweights that are all good mates, and we all want to beat each other. So it's coming down to the final few rounds, and with the drop rounds, there's literally like a 10-point gap between 4 drivers going into the final 3 races of the year. So obviously every point is there to play for, and you can guarantee we're all going to be going absolute hell for leather trying to take it. So right, I'll let this play for a bit and I will add some commentary in as we get a little bit further along. Otherwise I'm just going to talk for the whole duration, so I will jump back in a bit. So I thought I would jump back on here now as we are starting to catch the first lot of the lightweights. So in the wet, I always find it's very, very important to pick your moment when to overtake. Now, generally, these guys probably won't be too much of an issue because obviously, we've caught them up from like a 30 or so lap, 30 or so second delay. So passing them probably won't be too much of an issue. But the biggest thing that I find when you are overtaking anybody in the wet is not to get caught up in their accident. So obviously in the wet on slick tyres, it's very, very easy to spin and slide and all the rest of it. And what you don't want to do, the slightest bit of contact with any of these carts can cause you to crash and get involved in someone else's accident. But obviously, we're starting to catch these guys up now. So it's just about trying to get past smoothly and trying not to get caught up in any chaos. But as you can see, we've got a great run through this chicane here. And obviously these two guys are battling in their own race, and obviously I'm coming past and trying to get past myself. So it's just important that we don't get tangled up with them. Again here, just patience here. If I wanted to force it, I probably could have got past it. But again, it's just trying to get through here as cleanly and safely as possible. Obviously, at this point we've got a pretty big lead in the heavyweight class. So it's just a case of, like I said, just taking your time, getting through these people, and not having any accidents. But see, you get a good run here. I think, if I remember correctly, I passed him into two. I get a good run up here in the inside, which was, nice and easily done. To be fair, I think he made a bit of a mistake there anyway to make it nice and easy for me. So I'll do a little bit of a walkthrough of the lap. So this is turn 3. As always in the wet, you want to be staying as wide as possible. Generally, that's in most times when it's wet, that's where the most traction is off of the racing line. Again here, it's flirting with getting as close to that gutter in as you possibly can without going into the drain or the barrier. And again here, this is very, very important. It's so easy to hit that barrier there. I'm always aiming to keep it as wide as possible there. Again here, throughout the race I was experimenting with different lines here. I was trying to feed the corner off like I do here, which generally seemed the faster option based on my lap time delta. But again, in the wet it's hard to repeat the same line every lap because obviously track conditions tend to change a little bit. The bus stop chicane there, I was preferring the wider line. I felt there was more grip. I was losing time on the entry, but gaining it a lot on the exit and through the chicane. So me being a heavyweight, my race weight is about 108 kilos. So for me, speed down the straight is the most important thing. So I sacrificed a little bit of entry speed into that tight hairpin, which ended up carrying more speed for me down at the end of the straight and through the chicane. And this is turn 10, probably the hardest corner on the track to get right. But when you get it right and you know what to do at that corner, you can make up a lot of time. Same with the final corner here, keeping it nice and wide, aim for the pit lane, and then just fire it down over the start finish. And again here, turn 1, again another tricky corner, very easy to go into the tyre wall there. Trust me, I've done it a few times. And then we're back into turn 2, and again a little bit of guttering, steering nice and straight over that curb. Obviously we've got another back marker coming here, and just positioning the car. Experience of this track and knowing where to position your car, especially in the wet, is key. And obviously you just see it there. I was just a little bit patient through that chicane, let him miss the apex of where I wanted to be, and then just kind of on a bit of a switcheroo as we're going into 3 there. So yeah, I'm gonna sign off again now until something exciting happens. So we can see we're catching another set of back markers pretty rapidly there. Now you'll see my line in that corner there. I actually changed my line on that lap just to experiment, see if it was any quicker or not. And it was pretty good, but like I said before, my preference was the wide line to really maximise my exit speed. This one was nice and easy. I just showed him my armband there. He was also a heavyweight, so obviously he was getting lapped. So I just showed him my armband just to let him know, look mate, don't try and race with me because we don't want that. We don't want the back markers to be racing with the race leader. Nice little spin there, but whoever that was, that made that job a little bit easier. Again, trying a different line here, hooking it on that inside curb. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I don't think it was quite dry enough to really maximise that. So, you know, throughout the race, you'll see I do try a difference of lines. You know, obviously, you know, we're quite a way in front, and there's no real pressure from behind, or there's no pressure for me to see how many lightweights I can overtake. So just had a little play around with lines. Obviously, we can see at the minute on the Mocadamo dash, I'm currently 3/10 under my fastest lap time at this stage. So we'll see how this lap goes. Just dropping a little bit there, looking up the curve there nicely. Again, gaining on the exit, so about 3 or 4 attempts up now. And you know, in reality, you know, if I was in a race for the lead, you know, I could have definitely found a little bit more. But it was kind of like, what's the point? I mean, look, there's 7 tenths of advantage there straight away under my fastest lap time. So yeah, this is obviously a good lap, fast lap coming up. But again, it's always risk versus reward. You know, there's no reward for me to be going trying to push as hard as I can on the absolute limit. So it's just doing enough, having some fun, and just try and keep it, you know, just a little bit under the limit, so we're not going to end up in the tyre wall and throw an easy victory away. And again here, nice line through here, nice and tight all over the curbs, nice and tight on the exit. Still half a second up here as we're coming into the final section. And yeah, coming into 9, nice wide line there, clip the curb, apologies for the alarm, and then coming into 10, using plenty of curb there where the grip is, and it just sort of hooked it up on the ledge there, which gave me a little bit of traction, kind of like a berm. And now there is a yellow flag in the corner just there. Just as I went past that, I looked to the left and the yellow flag had gone out, which was for this guy here that spun on the inside somewhere. So I finished the lap, and that was the fastest lap of the race, which was a 1:43.66. And just to put that into context, I think that was about 2 seconds a lap faster than the second fastest heavyweight, and a tenth faster than the reigning Thursday Night League champion, which is Barry Morris, who is a lightweight. So yeah, like I said, the pace was there for sure. And again, just approaching another back marker here. Again, it's just kind of like just seeing what they're doing. Just, you know, if they're acting erratic or anything like that, it's kind of like you're better off just losing a half a second or a second to get past cleanly than it is to force a pass and get caught up with them in the tyre wall. So again here, nice and wide on the exit, and obviously I can see kind of a bit of an opportunity coming. But I think, if I remember correctly, I don't actually go for it. So again, I just sit behind and just kind of just follow the guy home. Trying a different line there as well, be in the corner off to get alongside. And at this point, it's like, well, I'm just telling him there to just don't race me. And then obviously on the brakes there, it was just much later on the brakes there, we got past. And again, obviously because he doesn't realise I'm the race leader in the heavyweights, give him a little arm signal there just to let him know I'm coming to lap his ass. And then I think this is another heavyweight here, so this one's going to be a little bit easier. But you'll see the other guy actually coming back up the outside there, but you know, he kind of rolled off a little bit there to let me through. And again, we're going to try a dry line here, and this was actually a very effective line to overtake people. Not the fastest in my opinion. It's a good line, but if you get it hooked, it's good. But if you kind of get on it and then come off of it, you just end up losing a lot of time. So again, risk versus reward, it's just not worth it in my opinion. But I will, again, I'm going to shut up again now and take a little break, and I will jump back in a bit later on. So you're about to see a incident with the car in front. So this is one of the lightweights that I've caught up to obviously overtake. Now, if you watch here, he gets lodged on the curb and it rotates the car and he goes into a slide. And obviously I had nowhere to go there, and I accidentally clipped his rear end. But this now is me gesticulating to race control, saying that was not my fault, because I did not want to get another penalty like I got last week, which ultimately cost me the race win. So obviously just starting the last lap now, so I'll let you watch this, and essentially it's just going to be a nice cruise home to the flag. So we're approaching the end of the lap now. That is job done. A race win, 26 points in the bag, which again I needed that for the championship because I've missed a couple of rounds. And yeah, this puts us all very much in contention now. I think there's about 10 points separating the top 4 drivers, and all of them are capable of winning every week. So the next 3 rounds are going to be exciting. So keep watching, and I will catch you then.